It's a cold March morning in Texas. A small team of divers steps into a pond that most people would never even notice. It sits on a quiet ranch outside San Angelo, the kind of pond you'd drive past 100 times and never think twice about. The water is dark, full of silt. You can't see your hand in front of your face down there. For 3.5 hours, the divers search in near total darkness while their team waits on the shore, watching air bubbles break the surface. Nobody knows what they're looking for. Not really. Nobody knows if they'll find anything at all. Then, one of the divers stops. Something is down there. Something heavy. Something that was never meant to be found. Before we go further, if you like unraveling real mysteries like this one, hit subscribe now so you don't miss what happens next. Trust me, this one gets stranger the deeper we go. What the divers pull out of that pond is a man's body, and it hasn't just sunk to the bottom by accident. It's been weighted down on purpose. Tire rims, concrete blocks, even a boat anchor, all wired to his body so he could never rise back to the surface. One investigator on the scene, a man with over 3 decades of experience recovering bodies, later said this was something he had never seen before in his entire career. So who was this man? And who wanted him to stay hidden forever? To answer that, we have to rewind, not to the night he disappeared, but to the very beginning of his life. His name was Michael Severance. Born in the summer of 1980 in a small town called Lee, Maine, so far north it's almost touching Canada. Michael wasn't the loudest kid in the room. He was a little shy, a little unpredictable, the kind of boy who blended into any group he joined. But put him on skis, or anything with wheels, and something changed. He came alive. When high school ended, Michael had a simple plan. Stay in Lee, drive a truck, haul logs for a living. Nothing fancy, just a quiet life close to home. But his father, a former Air Force man himself, had other ideas. He sat his son down and told him something that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Michael, you only know Lee, Maine. Go see the world first, then decide if you want to come home. Michael listened. He joined the Air Force. And here's the question worth sitting with for a second. What if he hadn't? What if that one conversation had never happened? We'll come back to that. Because Michael didn't just join the Air Force, he thrived in it. He became a crew chief on a C-130 aircraft, a job serious enough that they paint your name on the plane you're responsible for. He deployed overseas 5 times before he even turned 25, including tours in Afghanistan. The boy from a town of a few hundred people had, in just a few years, seen more of the world and more danger than most people ever will. Eventually, Michael was stationed at an Air Force base near Abilene, Texas. And this small-town Maine kid, quiet and a little awkward, fell in love with the Lone Star State almost instantly. He loved the nightlife, he loved the dancing, and he quickly figured out one very Texas truth. If you want to meet someone here, you'd better learn to dance. So he did. He taught himself the Texas two-step. In 2003, on a night out, he met a woman named Wendi Davidson. She was almost his opposite. Outgoing, fierce, raised on a West Texas cattle ranch, already a mother from an earlier relationship, and on her way to becoming a veterinarian, trained at one of the best programs in the country. They danced, they exchanged numbers, and things moved fast, really fast. Within months, Wendi was pregnant. By September 2004, they were married in a quiet courthouse ceremony. On paper, it looks like a whirlwind love story. But here's a question for you. How much do you really know someone after only a few months? Because underneath the surface, something wasn't right. Michael was an outsider in Wendi's family, a Yankee, as some called him, in a world of deep-rooted West Texas tradition. And no one made that clearer than Wendi's own mother, who worked alongside her daughter at the family veterinary clinic, the very same building where Michael and Wendi lived, in an apartment built into the back. The tension in that house wasn't subtle. When investigators later asked Wendi's mother how she felt about her son-in-law, she didn't hold back. She told them, flatly, that she never liked him, and never would. That's an unsettling thing to hear about a man who's about to go missing, but feelings aren't evidence. And at this point, nobody suspected what was actually about to happen. In January 2005, Michael and Wendi were finally planning a trip that mattered deeply to his family back in Maine, the first time they would meet Wendi and the kids in person. There was even a small wedding reception being planned. Michael's family was especially excited about one thing: watching his young stepson see snow for the very first time. They were supposed to leave on January 16th. Instead, a phone call came. It was Wendi. She told Michael's family the trip was off. Michael, she said, was just gone. He'd taken off. To the people who knew him best, that explanation made no sense. Michael wasn't the type to vanish without a word. And when his family pushed Wendi to go to the police, she finally agreed. When investigators sat her down, she gave them a simple story. The last time she saw her husband, she said, he was sitting on the couch in his boxer shorts. She left to run errands. When she came home that evening, he was gone. She even offered police a theory of her own. Maybe Michael was unhappy in the military. Maybe the pressure of another deployment was too much. Maybe he'd simply walked away from his own life. It's a believable story. It's the kind of story that, if true, closes the case quietly, with no crime at all. But was it true? Quick pause before we go further into the investigation. If you're the kind of person who likes figuring out where the story's headed before the reveal, drop your theory in the comments right now. Who do you think is responsible? I want to see your guesses before we get to the truth. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and tap like. It genuinely helps this channel keep telling stories like this one. Okay, back to the case. At first, this was just a missing persons case, handled by local police. They pulled phone records. They searched the home. They tried to reconstruct Michael's final days. One name did come up, a woman Michael had been calling. For a moment, investigators wondered if there was an affair, but when they spoke with her, the answer was simple. She was just a friend from the Air Force, trying to find out what happened to him. That lead went nowhere. Here's where the case takes its first real turn. Michael was technically still on approved military leave, which meant, legally, the Air Force couldn't fully step in yet. But on January 24th, his leave ran out, and Michael didn't report for duty. In an instant, everything changed. He wasn't just a missing husband anymore. In the eyes of the military, he was now considered absent without leave, and that opened the door for Air Force investigators to join the case, with tools local police simply didn't have. One of those tools? A tracking device, placed on Wendi's vehicle, something that would have needed a judge's approval in a normal civilian case, but which military investigators could authorize under looser rules. For 2 weeks, that tracker quietly recorded everywhere Wendi went, and a pattern started to appear. Again and again, she was driving out to a large ranch nearly 20 miles outside of town, and every single time, she stopped in the exact same spot, right next to a small stock pond. Around the same time, investigators pulled the hard drive from the computer at Wendi's veterinary clinic, and what they found on it sent a chill through the whole case. Someone using that computer had searched for information about how a body decomposes in water. Ask yourself, if you were investigating this case, and you had a tracking device pointing to a pond, and a search history about bodies decomposing in water, what would you think was buried out there? On March 5th, a Texas Ranger drove out to Wendi's clinic to confront her directly about that search history. and her reaction was strange. Instead of shock, she seemed almost prepared for the question, calmly offering an explanation about a creek near the building. Then, mid-conversation, she got a call about an injured animal and said she had to leave for an emergency. But she didn't go treat any animal. Investigators later learned she drove straight to the ranch and tried to get through the gate. When she was turned away, she left. For the first time in the entire investigation, she had panicked. That same evening, something happened that changed everything. A call came into police from Wendy's own brother. He told them to come to a local cemetery immediately. There, surrounded by her family, Wendi had finally said the words she never said to police. She hadn't killed her husband, she insisted, but she knew where his body was. She told them to search the pond. The next morning, divers went into that pond, the same one we opened this story with. After 3.5 hours in dark, freezing water, they brought Michael's body to the surface, weighted down, wired in place, still in his boxer shorts, exactly as Wendi had described the last time she saw him alive. Years later, from prison, Wendi would describe, in chilling, matter-of-fact detail, what she said she did that night. She talked about rolling his body into a box, struggling to lift it, building a makeshift ramp out of wooden boards just to get it into a truck. She described driving out to that pond in the middle of the night, with her 2 young children asleep in the back seat, including a baby just a few months old. And she admitted something even more disturbing. When the weights she'd brought weren't enough to keep the body under, and it started to float back up, she said she knew air was the reason. So she made holes in the body, vent holes, to let the air escape. Investigators later counted 41 of them. According to the medical examiner, none of those wounds had actually killed Michael. They were made after he was already dead, not to harm him, but to make sure he stayed hidden. So if the stab wounds didn't kill him, what did? Toxicology gave the answer. Michael's body contained a combination of powerful barbiturates, drugs used by veterinarians to sedate animals, and in higher doses, to end their lives. There was no reason for a healthy 24-year-old man to have those drugs in his system. And there was only one person in Michael's life with lawful, everyday access to them, his wife, the veterinarian. Every dose of controlled medication at a vet clinic has to be logged by law. When investigators went through Wendi's logs, one entry stood out: a large dose of a barbiturate recorded for a small dog. But when they spoke to that dog's real owner, she said her pet had never received that drug at all. The math didn't add up, and it pointed in one direction. Wendi was charged with murder. But here's the strange part. Even with all of this evidence, the tracker, the search history, the drug logs, the weighted body, investigators could never answer one basic question: why? There was no clear motive ever proven, just theories. Family tension, fear of divorce, financial strain. None of it was ever confirmed in court. As her trial approached in 2006, Wendi changed course. Instead of risking a jury, she entered a no-contest plea, legally treated the same as a conviction. She was sentenced to 25 years for murder, plus additional time for tampering with evidence. Her appeal, which challenged whether that tracking device was even legal, ultimately failed. Courts ruled that because Michael had been flagged as a possible military deserter, the tracking was justified. To this day, Wendi admits to hiding the body. She admits to weighting it down. She admits to the vent holes. But she still says, publicly, that she did not kill her husband. What do you think? Does that story hold up, or does it fall apart under its own weight? Michael Severance survived 2 war zones. He came home from Afghanistan. He survived deployments most people can't even imagine. He didn't survive his own home. He was buried back in Lee, Maine, the small town his father once told him to leave. so he could go see the world first. He did exactly that. His son grows up now, partly in Maine, close to the family, and close, finally, to the snow his father always wanted him to see. If this story hit you the way it hit me, make sure you're subscribed for the next one, and let me know in the comments which detail in this case disturbed you the most. I'll see you in the next video.